Is America about to deliver the world to China on a silver platter? Donald Trump's America First doctrine is not just shaking America's alliances, it's making China look like the more stable, more responsible global leader in comparison. And that is something Xi Jinping is all too happy to capitalize on. Trump's worldview isn't just about nationalism, it's about reviving a version of American power that harks back to a time before the World Wars. One of his historical idols, President William McKinley. Trump has publicly praised McKinley for his vision of American expansionism. In fact, President McKinley was the only president that President Donald Trump referred to in his inauguration speech. Now, in the expansionism of McKinley, he did annex Hawaii and cemented America's status as a rising imperial power. Trump's admiration for McKinley is clear, but McKinley's America was expanding. Trump's America, an economic one, is shrinking, and that's a gift to China. Hello and welcome. You're watching Statecraft with me, Geeta Mohan. Trump sees McKinley as the embodiment of American strength, a leader who wasn't afraid to flex military and economic muscle on the world stage. But the paradox? While McKinley's policies made America a dominant global power, Trump's America First approach is doing the opposite, pulling the US back from leadership, abandoning allies, and leaving power vacuums that China is eagerly filling. If America turns inward, who steps up? If Trump talks about grabbing territory, like his infamous suggestion to buy Greenland, what stops Xi Jinping from doing the same in Taiwan or the South China Sea? Trump's rhetoric on expansion, even if it is theatrical, sets a precedent. If the US plays by a different rulebook, why shouldn't China? Every time Donald Trump talks about putting America first, he hands China a strategic win. The best example for this was at the Munich Security Conference. On the one hand, US Vice President J.D. Vance horrified European allies by attacking their version of democracy.
The threat that I worry the most about vis-a-vis Europe is not Russia, it's not China, it's not any other external actor. And what I worry about is the threat from within, the retreat of Europe from some of its most fundamental values, values shared with the United States of America. In Britain and across Europe, free speech, I fear, is in retreat. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree. Now, the good news is that I happen to think your democracies are substantially less brittle than many people apparently fear. And I really do believe that allowing our citizens to speak their mind will make them stronger still. Which, of course, brings us back to Munich, where the organizers of this very conference have banned lawmakers representing populist parties on both the left and the right from participating in these conversations. Now again, we don't have to agree with everything or anything that people say, but when people represent, when political leaders represent an important constituency, it is incumbent upon us to at least participate in dialogue with them.
On the other, China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi painted China as a constructive, stabilizing force in an uncertain world.
国际世界乱象频出，一个重要原因就是有些国家迷信实力至上，打开了丛林法则的潘多拉盒子。实际上，国家不论大小强弱，都是国际法治的利益攸关方。多极格局不能是无序的状态。 大国要带头讲诚信、讲法治，坚决避起言行不一、零和博弈。正是基于这样的观点，中国坚定维护国际法治权威，积极履行国际责任和义务。我们加入了几乎所有普遍性的政府间国际组织和600多项国际公约。我们从不搞例外主义，更不搞合则用，不合则弃。 我们为当今不确定的世界提供了最大的确定性。我要强调的是，在遵守 国际法上不能搞双重标准，要尊重各国的主权和领土完整，就应该支持中国实现完全统一。
For Beijing, this is a propaganda goldmine. China has spent years branding itself as the true defender of global order, particularly for the global south. And Trump's America First rhetoric, it's reinforcing that narrative, making China seem like the adult in the room. It was not always this way. America used to step in where no other nation would, spending billions to fight HIV in Africa, sending doctors to battle Ebola, upholding security alliances. But now, under America First of President Trump, those commitments are vanishing. And China? It's rushing to fill the void. Just look at trade. Trump's tariffs on China were meant to weaken Beijing. Instead, they pushed China to strengthen trade ties elsewhere, especially with Europe, Africa, and Latin America also. The Belt and Road Initiative is expanding. Chinese investments are flooding into infrastructure, resources, and technology. America is pulling back and China is stepping up. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Trump's vision of foreign policy isn't so different from Xi's. Trump suggests that strong nations should do as they please. Xi believes the same. America takes what it wants, then why shouldn't China? We are already seeing it happen. China is increasing military pressure in Taiwan. It's growing more aggressive in the South China Sea. It's pushing India at the borders. If America's new stance is the strong get what they want, why should China hold back? So where does this leave India, Taiwan, and Southeast Asia? For India, the stakes are high. A stronger China means more pressure at the border. A weaker US means less strategic support. New Delhi is caught in a balancing act, aligning with the West while hedging against a rising China. Tensions between India and China along the line of actual control, a rugged 3,440-kilometer frontier in the Himalayas, have been simmering for decades. But in 2020, they boiled over into the deadliest clash in over 40 years, with 20 Indian soldiers and at least 4 Chinese troops killed in hand-to-hand combat in the Galwan Valley. Since then, China has continued its aggressive infrastructure build-up along the border, reinforcing its military presence. India, in turn, has responded by fortifying its own defenses and hardening its stance against Beijing's expansionism. If Trump's doctrine of unilateralism prevails, China could feel even more emboldened. The message would be clear. Territorial disputes are no longer governed by diplomacy but by force. For India, this is a dangerous precedent. China has already tested India's patience, and if Beijing believes that the global order is shifting towards a might makes right mentality, more incursions along the LAC could follow, and even claims on Arunachal Pradesh. For Taiwan, the danger is existential. China's military buildup continues, and with America's global retreat, Taipei must ask, if an invasion happens, will the US really come to its defense? Taiwan is at the center of this growing tension. China has intensified its efforts to assert control over the island through a strategy of coercion without violence. Cyber intrusions, economic coercion, influence operations, and military pressure are all part of Beijing's playbook to destabilize Taiwan. The goal? Undermine Taiwan's confidence, create internal divisions, and weaken its ability to resist Chinese influence. For Taiwan, the challenge is threefold. First, China's military and economic pressures are mounting. Second, Taiwan's domestic politics remain divided, complicating a unified response. And third, Taiwan's allies, including the United States of America, are becoming increasingly unpredictable. With Trump adopting a transactional approach to foreign policy, Taiwan could find itself more isolated than ever. For Southeast Asia, the reality is a world where might makes right. Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, they all face increasing Chinese encroachment in the South China Sea. And with an America that looks increasingly unreliable, their choices are limited. Southeast Asia, a region at the crossroads of global power struggles, this diverse collection of nations, whether it's Indonesia, Vietnam, or the Philippines, or even Thailand and others, are trying to maintain stability as US-China tensions escalate. China's growing economic footprint in the region, largely driven by the Belt and Road Initiative, has drawn both interest and concern. Billions of dollars are pouring into infrastructure, but at what cost? Countries like Malaysia and Laos are burdened with debt, sparking fears of economic dependence on Beijing. And the South China Sea remains a flashpoint. China's militarization of disputed territories has alarmed its neighbors, particularly Vietnam and the Philippines, who have turned to the US for support. But here's the dilemma. Can they really count on Washington? The irony is that Trump's expansionist policy doesn't just weaken American alliances, it makes Xi Jinping look justified when he talks about a new world order where China leads. The consequences of this shift in global power cannot be understated. If America retreats from its role as the global enforcer of democratic values, China's authoritarian model gains legitimacy. Trump's rhetoric isn't just isolating America, it's reshaping international norms. For decades, American leadership set the standard for rules-based order. Now, Trump is signaling a return to raw power politics. If the US is unwilling to uphold international laws, Xi Jinping has every reason to believe that China can set new rules on its own terms. India, Taiwan, and Southeast Asia are watching with bated breath. Without a reliable US security umbrella, regional powers are forced to rethink their strategies. Will India expand its military reach? Will Taiwan accelerate its push for international recognition? Will Southeast Asia bow to Chinese pressure? So is America playing right into China's hands? As Trump pushes an old-school, power-based approach to diplomacy, is he making it easier for China to justify its own territorial ambitions? Thank you for watching Statecraft.